Hey everybody, welcome back to the 144th, 145th episode of Taps and Patience. This is Jacob with Zone and Precision here with Harrison from Precision Ingenuity. What's going on, Harrison?
Oh, not much. I was going to say you're looking really good, AJ, but I guess it's not AJ today.
I know my beard's a little shorter. Wow, he lost a lot of weight real quick.
Yeah, he did.
His goals, his New Year's goals are
Oh
really
my good.
really
He
coming
just put
together.
me to shame is what I was going to say. I was going to say, "Dang, I need to go to the gym."
Wonder what gym he found. Wonder if that's CrossFit or vegan or what.
Oh my goodness. And he's not orange. I mean, what's up with that?
Yeah, I know. But wrong color shirt. Well, and he reorganized, so he doesn't have the green screen anymore.
Oh, that's
that
true,
makes sense,
man.
right?
He's getting his act together.
I know. So what's good? What's new?
Oh, not much. Just another week of getting stuff done. Got our lathe put back together. So
That's great.
happy to have that. So they took that thing all apart.
Wow.
They went all the way down to the casting and then basically rebuilt it from the bottom up. So
Dang. So how long did you have people on site for?
we had probably 2 people on site for about 3 days. So
It was so far so good.
So far so good. We bent the rails, or the rails were bent, and they were bent enough that they were on the borderline of needing to be replaced. And so they got it all straightened out the first time. And then we hit the weekend and the holidays. And so we were closed for 4 days for New Year's. And then when they got back on Monday, the tech was like, I think I can do better. And so he tore it all back down again and got it a little bit better. And so now it is, Weston says it seems to be better than it was factory. So
the real question is, did Weston touch the lathe after they did it?
He did. So he's running it.
Well, good.
So no,
so what did you guys do to whack that out of shape?
So Weston came in on Sunday. I was on vacation. Weston came in on Sunday to try to knock out 2 parts. He was going to only be in for a couple hours. There was 2 parts that needed to get knocked out real quick, so he was just going to come in and do that. And they were symmetric. They were a small part, but they were symmetrical. And they had grooves on both sides for snap rings. And he copied the first side to the second side. And when he did that, when you do grooves, snap ring grooves, which we don't do very often, you have to physically select the groove that you want it to cut. And he forgot to delete out the side he copied from, or he had removed all of them except for one. He forgot one. And so it tried to go into the chuck where it was holding onto the part. And it couldn't
do that. Yeah.
So
it tried though.
It tried real hard. Enough to bend the linear, the X linear guys, or X linear rails.
Wow.
So they kind of turned into concave. And so they worked for 3 days and got it all straightened out. It's on the upper limit of the factory spec, but for the first 7 inches, it's under 3/10, I think is what he said. And that's where we do the bulk of our work. So it's only when you get out to the last, I think up to 15 inches. At 15 inches, I think it was like 6/10, and their limit is 4/10. But if we wanted to get a whole new rail system, or no, I think that's what it was. Okay, the first time he did it, he had it at 6/10 out there, and he wanted to come back and redid it. And when he redid it, he got it under 4/10 on the further side, because that's where it was really bad. So I think he got it within the factory spec range when he was all said and done.
That's good, and hopefully Weston learned his lesson on this one.
Yeah. Well, what I like to. I was joking that he's got a long way to catch up to me. I've crashed far more stuff than he has.
Certainly.
So, but I do run the machines more than he does. He typically does. We get far more mill work than we get lathe work. He typically does the lathe work more than the mill work. But I mean, I've crashed. I mean, I destroyed a probe and almost our trunnion, which our trunnion is still a little tweaked, but I've got it in a I've got it fixed enough to where it's not a big enough error to worry about, but it's still there. And then we've got our spindles, which we've gone through on the Doosan a couple times, but I'm not sure that's so much my fault as it is machine misunderstanding. But and then we've had our fair shares of bumps and whatnot, just learning in general. But this will be the first one that's will be like having techs come in to actually fix it.
Right.
Like this. So
They didn't come in and do the spindles when you guys had those issues?
No, they did, but it was a much like that one was just drop out a spindle, stick in a new one. Like this one's like tearing the sheet metal apart and like getting down to the bare bones of the machine. Like
it's open heart surgery.
Yeah, it's open heart surgery versus the other one was just take some bolts out, drop a spindle, put a new spindle in, make sure everything's okay. Like it wasn't that big of a deal. It was like a half a day. So
gotcha. Would you say that even back in your guys' early days, right, with with the Tormach and when you first got the VF3, was he still running the machines a similar ratio to what he is now, or has he started to take on more of the office work?
In the very beginning, we were pretty close to 50-50. I did a little bit more than he did, but we would like change who was running the machine and who wasn't. So like he would be running a job and I would be programming because we had one machine and two people. And then when he finished up his job, I would hopefully be done programming and then we'd swap. And so we were constantly swapping back and forth between who was doing it and who wasn't. And then when we got the lathe, that's when our roles started to kind of solidify where I would gravitate to the mill and he would gravitate to the lathe. And then when we got into the 5-axis, I was the one that really championed the 5-axis. And that's really kind of what solidified me as more of the mill guy and him more as the lathe guy. Because he's done to date very little 5-axis. So
really,
I've done almost all the 5-axis work.
And you guys are still doing all of your 5-axis stuff out of Fusion, yeah?
Yeah.
How's that worked out for you guys in so far, at least, in the short term?
I have never had, to the best of my knowledge, from what I can think of right now, I've never had a problem with Fusion outputting anything to the 5-axis that wasn't something that I could have caught or a setting I didn't know about. Like there hasn't been any fundamental problems with Fusion in the 5-axis world that I've been in.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, the biggest thing that I would say on the 5-axis world is that if you're doing a trunnion-based 5-axis versus something that's like a dedicated, you got to make sure everything is just perfectly dialed, because if there's anything out of whack, it'll show up.
Like in terms of models and Fusion or machine configuration?
In terms of alignment to the machine. So like, because the trunnion you can move on the table, that's been the biggest thing that I've had to fight. It's been a combination of that, and the first 5-axis vise that we got was a Haas 5-axis vise. I think it was a rebranded Raptor or something. And the way that vise is set up, the center screw that moves the two jaws in and out, it's got like two like number 2 or number 3 screws that are holding it in the center of the vise, and they can very easily slide because they're in slots. And I didn't know that in the beginning, and so I was fighting a combination of the machine being out of alignment and not knowing it, and the vise jaws could actually slide with the whole screw assembly and everything. It's really a bad vise, but I've gotten so used to using it that like I just never replaced it. I really need to replace it with a Lang vise at some point. Get a proper small 3-inch vise. Right. But I've used that thing forever, and I figured out all of its little quirks, and I think I Loctited the screws now where they're not going anywhere. So
yeah, you kind of have that house of cards. It's like, don't touch it. It's working. It's good. Yeah. Just keep doing that.
Yeah, pretty much. And so it's like it hasn't been like I've solved all the problems to the point where it's a non-issue unless I think about it and I go, yeah, I probably should fix that or replace that at some point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've had really good luck. I've played with a couple of them out there, and my favorite so far has been the HWR setup. It's really nice. But we may or may not be knowing a friend of the show that's working on a self-centering vise that Subtract may or may not have made a bunch of parts for. So we may be
Oh,
seeing something new coming to the market. That would be really exciting.
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah. We'll see how it works out. But yeah, Subtract got an order for a bunch of screws for the self-centering vices, and we made a variety of sizes from the 100 millimeter to 400 millimeter range for the actual
Oh,
actuation distance on
that's really
the
cool.
vice screws. So we'll see. So far, so good from what I'm hearing. It sounds like we're going to go into. Sounds like we're going to get an order for kind of a bit more of an early production run on those. I think we
Mm-hmm.
made 5 of each size for very first friends and family assembly. To like, let's just make sure that this works. And we're waiting to hear back on a quote for. I think that we quoted 50 more of each of the sizes for a future run. So I'm kind of starting to think that we might actually see this product here fairly soon.
Nice.
Yeah, be really exciting. But among all the other fun Subtract goodies, which forever and always, we obviously, I know AJ's talked a lot about us just kind of exploding in December out of nowhere. We did such a variety of parts, and we quoted so much stuff that we've never had to quote before. We were quoting these small rectangular pieces. They're like a 16th thick, 60 thou by 10 by 15 millimeter. And they
Mm-hmm.
wanted like 5 or 10,000 of these little parts. And we talked to a couple shops, and like off the top of my head, I just started doing the quick napkin math of how many hours is someone going to have to stand in front of a machine, even if, these are only a minute of cycle time or 2 minutes of cycle time a piece. And it was like, wow, someone's going to spend an entire month standing in front of a machine just swapping these parts out. And they're so small. How do you robot load them?
Oh my goodness.
So we got started talking with one of our shops with a Swiss, and he says, well, maybe if they're Swiss parts, I'll take a look at them. We said, please help yourself. Like, take a look. Let us know. He emails me back like 30 minutes later. Yeah, no problem at all. These are like totally perfect Swiss parts. Let me, like, if you want them, I'll do them. And, he was willing, like, I think his machine was going to be able to do them in, 45 seconds of cycle time, and the parts catcher would just handle it. And it was like, wow,
Oh
these
man,
machines really
that's super
are
cool.
money printing machines.
That's good to hear because I am going to be in the market for a Swiss maybe this year.
Have you
So,
started that process at all yet?
no, I have no place to stick it. The medical customer that is going to be the biggest user of that machine if I do get one. I just had a phone call conversation with them last week, and I basically said, "Listen, I want you to send me as much as you can, as many prints as you can of Swiss parts that you want, so I can start having a history of what parts you're looking for us to do. So when I'm looking for this machine, I can go, can it run this part? 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 So I can start figuring some of that stuff out." So,
Yeah.
and they said that they're gonna, as parts come in, they're gonna start sending them to us, knowing that we're not going to take them, but just so we can get eyes on them.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's fantastic to know, because now you have this backlog of parts that I've worked out in a sense that that there's a reasonable chance that you'll get these, as well
yep,
as I'm assuming that this company's a lot of their parts are going to be in a similar size range, tolerance range,
yeah,
feature set. Like, you now have a
yep,
backlog of all that stuff, which is awesome.
yeah. They sent me a part today that I've been thinking about trying to figure out how I would do, and it's basically a 5 thou shim. So I have no idea how to do a 5 thou shim. It's something that, like, realistically, it would be, you would buy a 5 thou sheet of material and either laser cut or stamp.
Punch them, yeah.
Yeah, that's realistically the best way to do it because you're not machining it. So
Yeah, wow. Just put a punch set in your spindle and have the fourth axis wind the tape through as you're punching as it pulls through.
yeah,
Terrible ideas by
basically.
Jacob.
That's actually not as bad of an idea as you might think. So back in my Tormach days, we did a product for a local company. It was a replica of a muzzle device that was made for the what was it, like an Australian bush war or something? I forget what it was, but it was some device to help with fully automatic guns. to keep them down. And it was made very crudely back in the old days, back whenever it came out. And so we were trying to replicate all of that. And in that process, there was a weird spring that was hand bent. And I actually created dies and used the spindle on my machine to have a form tool to go around and form the spring. So I would take a spring in, I would clamp it in, and then a tool would just sit there and free float and bend it around in all these different shapes to get it to look like that. And it
Wow.
worked perfectly.
Really?
Yeah, it was so cool.
That's
I had two
insane.
different dies. I would cut everything to length, and it would just be a flat piece of material. I'd stick it in the first die, and it would do a couple of the different bends that it couldn't do on the second one. And then once I did that, I would move it over to the second die, and it would come in and bend it the rest of the way. And it worked really well. So it was pretty cool.
Wow.
So like your idea of punching is actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I've done some wire forming in my machine. I made a set of dies to do. It was a 100 thou diameter steel wire that needed 6 bends in it, and one of the bends was straight down. And so I created a mandrel that went in the spindle, and then I machined a block that it would drive that around and like bent the wire and put the 6 bends in it, and then the end had a hook in it that would push straight down on the last piece against a flat wall. My biggest issue with those was I wore out the aluminum like guide bushings essentially that was holding the wire back within. I assumed I made them, they'd last for the order was 200 pieces. And so like I make an aluminum one, no, but I'll do 200 pieces, no problem. And after 40 pieces, it started like all my, like I had 2 bends that just started opening up on me and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And in the bottom, it was, I had the diameter of the wire oversized by 10 or 15 thou or whatever it was. So the wire had plenty of space to fit in, and the nose of the mandrel had plenty of space to get in and get around. But at some point, that wire from being pushed on it just wore the aluminum out within 40 parts or whatever it was. And I had 2 bends that explicitly started to change on me. And I finished that order and I said, I will never do that again. Because it was,
yeah.
I mean, I must have burned through 100 parts trying to get all of the bends to actually, because you have to overbend them by a couple degrees on all of them. And everything was handwritten G code, all of it, right? Like how do you fusion cam that? Like there's not you could trace toolpath it, but how do you, that was not the move. I think that was my like 5th or 6th job I had done on the machine back when I like had first bought it and just started like playing with making parts for people.
Yeah.
But I will not be doing that anymore.
Yeah. Speaking of aluminum, that was the one problem with my fixture was that I had an aluminum screw that was holding it in, and I kept using an impact to take it on and off to quickly change out the springs, and those threads did not last.
Yeah.
I think we had to make like, what was it? 300 or 400 of them. And I had to remake the die, I think 3 different times just because that screw would just wear out.
Was it a real small screw?
I didn't have helicoils at that point. I think it was a quarter 20.
Oh, wow. Correctly. I mean,
it was either a quarter 20 or it was like a number 12.
Okay.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Kind of in that size range, though. I haven't had issues with threads that size, but I've had a lot of M3s pull out of aluminum.
Yeah,
like a lot of
this
M3s.
This was just because I was constantly running it in and out with an impact.
Yeah,
and so when it get to the bottom and it click a couple times, it just doing that constantly wore it out.
Absolutely. So. Wow. Well, hopefully, one of the little problems from the die forming was not having spindle orient because of the age of my machine. I wasn't lucky enough like the new BT30 machines that have a sensor on them and the smarter VFD and everything that you can, I think it's M19 and you can spindle orient with them. Because the age of my machine, it just doesn't have that feature. And so I was talking with a good friend of ours in the show who works for Tormach and was talking a little bit about, possibly putting a BT30 spindle in my machine. Oh man, because buying TTS tool holders from Tormach, and Tormach only is pretty like no one makes a hydraulic or a shrink fit holder for those for reach or for other reasons. And you're also stuck paying like $60 a holder for even like for any holder, right? And that's not terrible, but when you want to be doing weird experiments with funky stuff, it sucks to be spending a bunch of extra money on stuff. And I was certainly jealous of the guys buying Amazon and AliExpress tool holders for BT30 and CAT and everything. And so we were talking really early on about swapping a spindle, and the conversation was, well, do you have a tool changer? Well, yeah, my machine had a 20 position tool changer on it. And well, apparently, spindle orient is a thing, and all of the downstream electronics for spindle orient are remarkably expensive and many. There are so many components you'd have to replace to get that feature working, regardless of the spindle type. And the thought was, well, as long as you don't have a tool changer on it, it's fine. Who cares? Just manually index a tool when you throw it in there. Or the other conversation was remove the drive dogs from the spindle. And Tormach was so wise to cast the drive dogs in and machine them in place that you would have to physically grind them off to have those removed. I think me and AJ actually talked about it on the show one of the weeks that you were gone about putting a BT30 spindle in this machine. And AJ and everybody else told me it was a terrible decision. Well, I decided to do it anyways.
I was gonna say, I can see where this is going. Yeah. Everyone says it's a terrible decision, so I'm doing it.
So I had this harebrained idea to put servos on my machine. I could buy a full set of the exact same servos that the Tormach 1500 is using, and I found a supplier in China that I could buy the whole kit for about $1,000. And as far as Tormach is concerned, I could spoof the machine to think it was a 1500 and just limit the travels and the feed rate down a little bit. And now I would have all of the goodies of a 1500 essentially, right? I have inputs, outputs for chip conveyors and through spindle coolant. Not that my machine could ever do through spindle, but
is it the same board?
So the 1500 uses all EtherCAT for everything. So the servos have IO on the physical servo or on the controller.
I didn't know that.
And the servo controller handles all the IO for the machine. So all the e-stop signals go through the STO source on those. The door interlocks, the probing, everything goes through the EtherCAT servos. They don't have an extra board because the 1100 and the 770s and all those use what Tormach calls the ECM board. It's basically a Mesa FPGA wrapped up in their fancy little cloak that they resell. So the newest machine, the 1500 MX doesn't use any of that. It just uses the EtherCAT servos. No extra IO modules, no extra anything. They use a large breakout board to break that stuff out. But otherwise, everything's just done right on EtherCAT. So if I bought those same EtherCAT servos, in theory, I could strip everything else out of my electrical cabinet. I wouldn't need the controller boards. I wouldn't need the VFDs. I wouldn't need contactors, any of that stuff, because it's all handled by EtherCAT now.
So what you're saying is you're making the new Tormach 770 now that they've announced it.
Well, you see, this plan has been in place since long before they announced that machine.
Because I was going to ask you, like, depending on this tale, hey, have you seen their new machine? Do you have any interest in their machine? And the more I hear this story, the more I go, you're making the machine out of your existing parts.
I am building the Section 8 770 MX. So again, like, I had started this kind of thought process and consideration and conversations before there was even I'm not going to say before there was conversation about the new 770 MX. The 770, the newest one, and this is hearsay. This is kind of what I've put together, but tariff popped up and they were importing these machines directly from China. But now they import the machines to Mexico where they bolt on a bunch of servos and finish putting them together and then bringing them into the US. So whether or not that's actually the case would be interesting. But that now they're building them in their Mexico facility where they have a large staff. They have electrical engineers. They're able to put these machines together. Because otherwise, it's just the bones of a 770. It's not really any different than the old MX. And the old MXs, they were buying Technic ClearPath servos from the US and shipping those to China to get assembled on the machine, where then they just come right back to the US. And I've heard some horror stories about buying bulk from ClearPath, where ClearPath sells every single servo individually in a box of its own. They UPS every single individual servo. So when you buy 10,000 servos, they send you 10,000 boxes from UPS, each with their own individual label, individually wrapped servo. You have to unwrap all those, put them on a crate, and then send them to China.
So my question is, are they made in China?
The servos?
Because if they are, that is the craziest. From China to the US to get individually packaged, then to get broke down back into a bulk order to send back to China.
Yes. So they're made either in China or Taiwan. They're certainly not made in the States. So it's a little obtuse if you ask me.
Yeah.
But
hey, could you just take those servos you're going to send me one at a time and just drop them off at the shop next door?
yeah, they're probably not that far away. But that's just like, that's how they conduct business. And that's kind of goofy.
Oh.
And so Tormach at some point had started using, so the servos that they put on the 1500 and on the 770, the brand and model line, was what they originally started on their robot. So those were the original servos from the Z86, because you need force sensing and some other stuff that you don't get with ClearPath, that you certainly have with an EtherCAT bus. EtherCAT is like genuinely magic for anyone in the automation space who hasn't used it before. So that was the plan a long time ago. And the plan was to throw a bunch of servos on it and just leave it TTS, and then eventually change it out for BT30. And then there just so happened to be a guy on either it was the David Looms like Facebook group or it was the Tormach Facebook group, and said, hey, does anybody have one of these ATCs laying around they'd be willing to sell? And I kind of scratched my head for a second and thought, okay, if I'm going to be rebuilding my tool changer, putting, going from 20 tools to 16 tools to match the 1500 tool changer, and changing the whole servo system out for the EtherCAT one, I'm going to have to rebuild all these mounts. This whole system's going to have to be different. I'm probably going to have to go to a pneumatic system instead of stepper driven for the shuttle. We'll see what this guy says. So I shot him a text and said, like, I have an ATC. I would happily rip it off my machine and sell it to you. And he came back with a number that I couldn't refuse for what it was. And so the ATC very quickly got packaged up in a box and sent to Texas, I think. And there it sits in a box waiting for it to be put on its future machine. And then I had all this money burning a hole in my pocket. So I called up Tormach and said, if I buy this spindle and I have this older 770, will it just bolt in? And as far as everybody knew, the answer was, yeah, it's same diameter, same mounting flange, just bolts right in. So I ordered the spindle, and they just so happened to have a returned one that someone had purchased at one point and returned for whatever reason. And so I got excited because I could I think I saved 30% off the price of a brand new in-box one. Ordered it, shows up. I'm looking at it. I'm excited. The packaging's not great, but it's a returned one. It's fine. Like, I understand. And there's no drawbar and there's no Belleville washers on it or anything to actually handle the pull stud. And I'm kind of curious. So I start getting on the phone with Tormach and we start looking at it. And I look inside the spindle of it, and there's a pin sticking out from the side of the spindle bore. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Like, something isn't right here. And so I kind of put my critical thinking hat on for a second, and I had a bunch of BT30 holders that I bought, and I put one of the holders with no pull stud on it into the spindle bore, and it didn't fit. But I put an R8 collet in it, and the R8 collet fit right in there, no problems. So apparently somebody from Tormach bought a BT30 spindle, put their R8 spindle right back in a box, and sent it back to Tormach and got a refund on it. And it took me way too long to figure that out.
Yep.
So I, of course, dealt with Tormach and that whole situation. Tormach handled it very well. I put something on my Instagram story, and I had, I think, 3 different people from Tormach all messaging, like, trying to figure out what's going on. How do we help? What do we do? And so, after, I think from ordering to getting the right spindle was like 3 weeks. And so I got the new spindle, and I start taking apart the machine. I take the whole head out of it. I take all the sheet metal off of it. Of course, the pulley is stuck on the spindle, and it takes a lot to get it out of there. The machine's 10 years old and hasn't been taken apart, I'm certain. And I get the spindle out and I put them next to each other on the bench. And the interface where the power drawbar presses on the top of the spindle is different by like 2.5 inches. So the entire air cylinder assembly needs to move. Okay, like no big deal. Start getting some measurements, start figuring that out. Well, come to find out, now I have to move the air cylinder assembly far enough up that now I have to cut a custom sunroof in the top of my machine enclosure to get the air cylinders to have clearance for the Z to go up to the homing position. And it's just like starting to turn into a nightmare at that point where I was kind of promised a bolt-in assembly. So if anybody out there has a 770 PCNC pre-M series, do not buy a BT30 spindle.
So let me ask you a question. Is the casting and everything the same, or is it just the fact that like it was built around a smaller package, and so while it technically does fit, everything's just shrunk?
So there's two castings. There's the main head casting the spindle physically fits in. That has the sliding fit with the mounting flange. Like that's physically what the spindle mounts to. And then there's a secondary casting that sits on top of that, and that holds the 3-phase induction motor. That is where the brackets for the power drawbar and the subplate for all that goes. So on my machine, the power drawbar, you can take a pin out and like pivot the power drawbar out of the way. So that way you can get to the top of the spindle, change belts, that kind of stuff. So how that power drawbar mounts into the machines after 2019, something like that, they changed, and that top casting changed. And so physically the location where the power drawbar assembly bolts in is completely different. The subplate is completely different. The risers are different. They went from a 3-stage air cylinder to a 2-stage air cylinder. Basically the entire power drawbar assembly changed at that point. And without building a new casting or maybe welding, brazing something onto the casting and remachining that, now it's starting to sound like a bit more of a nightmare. So at some point there was a design for a PCNC Series 4 that never came to be. And it just so happened that someone out on the internet found there's a file that exists for the casting and the power drawbar assembly for the Series 4 that is more similar to the newer machines. And so I was able to tear that apart in the model, did a bunch of measuring from the spindle, the datum where the flange mounts to the bottom of the spindle, and the entire stack up from there up to figure out where the top hat sits, which is the part where the power drawbar interface is underneath. So that way it can squeeze the pull stud down instead of pressing all the force of the air cylinder through the spindle bearings. So I measured this entire stack up in the most awful possible way. There may or may not have been a photo on my Instagram with the spindle resting on 2 T-nuts so that way the drive dogs didn't tip over on the drive dogs. And I have my dial test indicator on 2 1-2-3 blocks stacked end on end to get enough rise on it, and a like 11-inch stack up of gauge blocks resting on the top of the datum for the spindle nose, trying to compare the top of the gauge blocks to the very top of the spindle interface on it. So I got all those dimensions, so I know what that stack up is, and I worked up a model. I've 3D printed a prototype. It's currently in the machine. BT30 spindles in with all the 3D printed prototype mock-up stuff. I have a single change to make to a single set of brackets to give myself a little bit of clearance, and then I'll be able to machine all the parts to finally have the BT30 spindle in the machine. And one of the lovely Patreons and Subtract vendors, and now a good friend of mine, let's just say, lives fairly local and has a VF2 and is so gracious to machine all the parts for me to finally get the BT30 put in. But I have had those spindles in and out 15, 20 times first I thought I was going to be able to machine everything myself. And so I put the spindle in to get all my measurements and figure out where everything was, pulled the spindle up, put the old spindle in, and started making chips. And then come to find out that wasn't right. And I think I did that 3 times before I decided I need to 3D print prototype this stuff. Like, this is ridiculous that this is happening. And so I have all the parts, I have all the stuff, I have all the materials, I have all the CAD models. So hopefully on Friday we're gonna have all the parts to have a lovely BT30 spindle in my machine after all of that work. And I still won't have the spindle orient yet.
So here's a question for you. At what point would it make sense to sell the machine in its original state and just get a new one?
About 100 hours ago.
Like, where's that line cross?
Yeah, that line was a long time ago. That line would have been a lot harder was I running my machine a lot more. I set a quota when I started working with Subtract. I mean, AJ started Subtract. And I told myself that, like, I was going to stay on Xometry. Like, I don't want them to just kick me off because of inactivity. At a minimum, if they're going to kick me off, it's going to be because I'm their competitor, not because I haven't done anything for them. And so I set a quota where I was going to do one Xometry job every 6 weeks. That way, no matter what, they wouldn't kick me off. And because of that, I was kind of keeping an eye on the job board. And I was doing really well on that. I was actually doing 2 Xometry jobs a month on average while we were kicking Subtract up, and that helped to make a little bit of extra money. And then I decided to start tearing apart the machine, and I was at a point where we were able, like, I had enough work with Subtract that I could basically work on Subtract as much as I wanted to, and I didn't have to run the machine in terms of keeping myself busy. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 7 weeks or whatever it was. And now we're right at the end, where hopefully there will be a spindle in my machine, and it will be wonderful, and I'm so excited. And then I'll be able to bolt the servos on and start playing with that front at some point. But man,
you're gonna have spindle orient?
I will have spindle orient once I put the servos on it. But there will be spindle orient. I will be able to move the machine faster. I will have actual feedback. There have been plenty of times where I have had crashes hard enough that, you know, I've sent a drill and the end of the Jacobs chuck into the part, and then because the machine still has all steppers on it, it doesn't know that anything has happened and doesn't know to error out. And it's happily still trying to move along, trying to do whatever. Yep. Then it runs into... It'll skip steps, and then it'll try to move, and then it'll run into hard limits. And it's a mess. And so having servos on it will certainly be nice. But also the machine doesn't have enough horsepower to actually hurt itself. It just breaks the drill and buries itself in the piece of material. So hopefully that saga will be wrapped up here fairly soon. I was offered at one point to purchase a Sile X7 that sounded really tempting. And then I got 3 more weeks into this project, and now I'm kicking myself for not buying that machine because one of the other Patreons in the Discord decided to buy that machine. And like, I'm very happy for him, let's just say. But I'm certainly kicking myself that I didn't just say.
You're begrudgingly happy for him.
I'm so happy for him, but I am in pain that I didn't just pull the trigger when I did.
Oh.
So it'll be all right. We'll get the spindle in. It'll renew my love for that machine, and I will hopefully Subtract will continue doing really well, and I'll be able to steal a few more Subtract jobs, because there have been a couple Subtract jobs that I could certainly have done on that machine. So run a couple more Subtract jobs, certainly make more money running Subtract jobs than I do Xometry. And it'll make it all worth it, and I'll love it through thick and thin. But yeah, it was a mess, and I'm certainly just devaluing my machine by every upgrade I pulled onto it at this point. So it'll
be a one-of-a-kind machine, that's for sure.
It will. I can't say that I wasn't egged on by Norman from Tormach, who happens to have a prototype machine, who is also bolting EtherCAT servos onto his like prototype, non-existent, shouldn't exist in this configuration machine. So Norman, this is all your fault. It's all your fault. But speaking of the Patreons, we have wonderful Patreons who
Woohoo!
do wonderful things and pay for all the awesome stuff. I don't know what AJ normally says here. Realistically, they pitch into the fund to not only pay myself and my salary, but also getting everybody to go to IMTS. So special thanks to new patrons, Avery M and Hasey M. Maybe that's just a screen name and not actually a name that you want to go by. So if you would like that changed, you should send me a DM on Discord and I'll get it fixed for you in the show notes. All of our Patreons get access to the early access of the episodes, and all free Patreons get to participate in the Q&A every week. And if you pay $10 a month or more, then we read off your name. I'll do that now. So we have $10 a month. We have Josh at Leighton Machine, who bought the Style X7. We have Mylan Y, Devin C, Alex at Mill City Roasters, Christian O, Stephen M, Horse Pulverizer Incorporated, Daniel R, James at Moultrie Made, Ryan at Strato Manufacturing, Austin W, Kyle at Kirsch Machine, who's going to machine the Tormach parts for me. Thanks, Kyle. Devin at Sinister Machine Works, James N, Ben at Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S, Shep at Alderson Prototypes, Jason S, Joshua H, Christian Z, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z2Z Systems, Trey V, Alexander B, Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at JSpec Engineering, and probably like 5 other places, Chris at Zyke Precision, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and as ever, Jake Brownson.
You missed one Patreon member.
Yeah.
Yourself.
That's fine. I didn't need to thank myself this episode. I pat myself on the back every week.
I appreciate you, Jacob. Let me just say that.
Well, thanks, Harrison. I appreciate it. It's fun getting to hang out with you guys and do all the behind the scenes stuff. And whenever you guys ask me to make music for you, just editing it out of the podcast so no one ever hears that you asked for that.
Hey, that's the best way.
Yeah. So we do have a Q&A question from Max at Polar Precision. Polar Precision? Might be Polar Precision.
I'm not sure how to...
And this question was for AJ and for Harrison. So Harrison's going to go ahead and answer. And I will make sure to put it in a future episode for AJ so that he can answer his half. Overall, do you guys regret starting your business on Etsy schemes like deck defenders and pry bars? Is there anything you would have done differently if you were to start selling your own products again?
So, for starters, I did not start my business on Etsy. I technically started my business on Xometry. Xometry was my first thing that I ever did. And we got into the product space because that's something I've always wanted to kind of break into. And then it never went anywhere. And so I would say that it really kind of depends on the product and how successful you are. There's another guy who's a couple towns over who we met. I actually went and visited him because he got an SVM before I did. And so I went and visited his shop to go look at the SVM. And he wasn't doing job shop work. He had come up with a product and he just started posting it in Facebook groups. And it was selling really well. In fact, I think that's the main thing he's still doing and that it's been growing like crazy. So I think the job shop world is a lot easier. How's a good way to put it? The job shop world is a more consistent growth that is slower, whereas the product world, it's a lot harder to hit your mark, but if you hit it, it can be a lot more explosive. That's probably the best way that I would describe it. And so I think if you can get a good product and if you can find a good market for it, there's a lot more potential with that. But there's also a lot more risk with it versus going the job shop route, which if you can start getting a few customers here and there, it's a lot easier to kind of slow roll the job shop growth and have it kind of follow a more linear pattern than the product stuff can. And I would love to get back into the product space again. And if I do, I'm going to do it a lot different. I'm not going to pull my punches. It's going to be something that I'm going to hit the ground running and I'm going to go full in. Because that is the thing with the product space is if you want to make an impact, unless you can find a niche community that's already founded that you can kind of join and kind of hit that niche by bringing it in. If you're doing anything mainstream, you have to hit it big. if you're doing anything kind of niche, if you can find that community and market to that community, you'll have a lot more success in the early stages in trying to hit like a general consumer product. That's what I've seen and through my experience.
That at least sounds really fair from the people that I've talked with, from my little bit of experience in this space and in my previous experiences in other kind of more product oriented spaces. Is if you're in a niche community, and I mean like a niche community, I think that your chances of being successful by making a product are significantly higher than kind of saying, "Well, I have a machine, I should probably just make a product with it," and kind of scratching your brain to come up with something. Or, okay, well, what's if you're always looking for a solution, right? If you're saying, in my everyday life, what can I make that'll make my life a little bit easier? The chances of you finding something that'll actually kind of trigger that with other people as well, in my head at least, is fairly low. But if you are a Magic the Gathering player and you are making deck defenders for specifically like your group of Magic the Gathering people, oh man, I like,
Yeah.
I can't see a world where you wouldn't be successful as long as you had the right head on your shoulders and everything. Like I
Yeah.
bought a machine because I was in the like super niche DIY open source flight sim community, and I started making parts for that. And really, they were just for myself, but I had so many people. I probably had 40 people that reached out and said, I would buy these tomorrow if you were selling
Mm-hmm.
them. And the
Yep.
only other ones that were out there that were selling, that I would have competed against, were selling for $1,000 to $1,500 per set. And like, okay, how big is that community? Sure. But if you can continue to kind of drive into that community and continue to solve problems there, that's like, I think, a highly successful, or at least a good chance of success in a business model. I'm not sure what book, maybe it's E-Myth or it's a different book, but if you say that business is 0% luck, then you're just wrong. But you have to have a lot of opportunities to continue to put in the effort to actually gain that luck, right? Because every day that spend on this project, every failure, every opportunity is just another opportunity to get lucky and to kind of strike that. And I still think that even running a job shop has a little bit of that same ethos to it as well, where like the best customers are the customers that you get connected to through a friend of a friend or through a connection of a previous customer or whatever. And unless you got connected with that person, like I know that Subtract, like 25 to 30% of our monthly orders are by like a single, like 25%. We have two people that'll order 25% of our orders every month. So 50% are coming from the same two people. And
Yep.
that's luck as far as I'm concerned, right? Lucky for who watched a YouTube video or listened to this podcast.
I heard it said, and I could not tell you where I heard this, but success is where luck meets preparation.
Yeah.
If you're prepared to capitalize on that opportunity when it presents itself, you're lucky that you got it, but you're prepared and able to take advantage of it, and that's what makes success.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like
So
with the podcast, we're lucky that whoever listened to the podcast decided to place an order. But it wasn't luck that AJ and Harrison have been recording the podcast for 145 straight episodes.
Yep.
Period. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of space out there. And I am actually really curious to hear what AJ has to say about that design, because AJ really did get started with this with, I think it was the branding irons were his first product, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was branding irons, and he did those on
The Pocket NC.
the Pocket NC.
Yeah.
So, which I almost think he had a Tormach before that, and then he got the Pocket NC. or
I
was it
don't.
the pocket NC the first
I
thing?
think the pocket NC was first, or maybe he had a Sherline mill first. There was two
Maybe that's what it
kind of
was.
smaller
I
machines, and then eventually he got into one Tormach. From what I know, I think he had a
Yeah,
PCNC 1100 that he had for a few
he
months
did.
before he bought his 1100 MX. That you guys had, I'm not going to say sister machines, but very similar configurations of
Yeah,
1100 MXs before he bought the
yep.
Haas. And I'm sure if I go back and listen to the podcast, I could hear the story about how he came to want to purchase the Haas, but I'm not sure of
Yeah,
that story.
so that story, just to give you the cliff notes of it from what I remember, it wasn't. I think it was IMTS the year I didn't go, because I think the first year we did the podcast, he went and I didn't, and then I was only able to hit the second one. And it might even have been before we started the podcast. No, it would have been after. Anyways, he was there and he got a phone call from a used machine dealer who was also at IMTS, and they ended up going and meeting in person and or something, and then he ended up buying the machine.
Interesting.
So
Gotcha.
it wasn't planned. In fact, he thought it was a different used salesman, and the one that called him was one that he had like messaged like 3 months ago.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so it was kind of a weird situation, and he ended up getting it, and I still think that machine has a lot of potential. That he just needs to get that spindle fixed, and he just needs to bite the bullet and do it. But
No.
I've given up hope at this point.
I put a new spindle in my machine before he did his, and mine didn't even need it.
Yeah, so he's got a perfectly good machine there, but I think he thinks he's just going to teach now that he's done making parts maybe for.
Well, and he has the Tormach, and genuinely, the 1500 is a remarkable machine.
It is.
The control is, I mean, Path Pilot, it's awesome, and
Yeah.
it's only gotten better. And now this
Mhm.
machine, with all the servos and with some reasonable horsepower, and as far as I'm concerned, as much rigidity as those servos could handle.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes, but here's my deal with it from like a business perspective. If I have a machine and I'm still making monthly payments on that machine's got to make those payments.
yeah, that's fair. That's
so
fair.
so either sell it or get it making parts. It either needs to be making you money or it needs to be off your balance sheet.
Yeah. No, that's probably the right way to go about it. That's why I paid off my Tormach as fast as humanly possible, and then I just didn't have to worry about it. But
Yeah,
no, totally. Well, hopefully,
I do have a lot more machine payments than either of you. So.
well, you have more machine payments than anything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, our we have a lot of machine payments, but thankfully we've hit the halfway point on at least one of them. So,
okay. Is that the VF3?
yeah, the VF3. So
That's great.
we're I think past the halfway point at the end of this month. So I think we made the halfway month payment in December. So when we make the payment this month, it'll be the second half. So
yeah, finally. Well, and with amortization, however you say that, like your payments are slowly going more and more and more towards the machine, right? So now you're building more. I mean, I know equity isn't the right word in a depreciating asset, but like, you move faster for the second half.
Percentage of ownership goes up faster.
Yeah, exactly. Chances the bank will come take it from you just because they feel like it goes significantly down.
Yeah. So, and if this is a year of recovery and we end up not buying a machine and only doing the addition, then I would like to try to pay one of the machines off, and it'd probably be that one.
Yeah.
If we ended up with excess of cash without a machine purchase, then I'd like to pay that one off, and then that'll help for the following years. So,
yeah. Have you guys really sunk your teeth into the addition yet, or what are your guys' standstills on that project?
We are in the process of, I think, getting drawings and quotes. So we are. My dad is kind of spearheading that operation just because. So we don't own the building. My family owns the building. We're renting the space from them. So my dad's kind of spearheading it because it's their property. And so he's kind of taking charge of that. So we're telling him what we want, and then he's going out and working on the addition.
Gotcha.
So we'll still probably end up paying for all of it,
Of course.
but it's going to be their building if we move out at some point, and so he's kind of taking charge of that.
Yeah, make sure it works with what their visions are for the space and
Yeah,
their
yeah,
investment.
yeah. If they either want to rent it out to someone else, if we do move out someday, or if they want to sell it, whatever direction they go down the line, he needs to be involved in that so he has a good understanding of everything.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah, that's well, it's really exciting to hear that you guys are getting more space. I went through the talks about an addition on my current home shop. I kind of took some inspiration from the guy, I think it's Liberty Precision Machine Tool, something like that. Saunders did a tour way back in the day, and he put a DMG, I think, in an addition on his shop and then built the building around it. And so I looked a little bit into doing something like that, basically pouring a pad, setting a VF2 on it, and building a building with a semi-removable wall. You bring a VF2 in from the back, and then you set it down, and then I still have the entire square footage of the rest of the shop that will, especially if I continue running machines, we'll certainly get a lathe here at some point. But otherwise, I do like my inspection setup is significant for the small amount of space that I have and packing and shipping and all that. And so I'd be able to have all that space. It still retains without having that eat into the floor space of the area because, with my machine, it works out that it's fairly compact. And I like my Tormach was before they started putting the coolant in the stand of the machines, like my coolant's out the back. So it's more similar to a 1500 like that.
Interesting.
Which is I was very upset when I bought the machine that was the case because I like the floor space. I wanted the floor space. And now it's so nice being able to run the machine and clear chips while I have cycle time going. Before I was running the machine as a shop, I had no clue that would be something I'd ever need to do. And now I do it every single time the machine is running. I'm actively scooping chips out of the back of it, or I'm using a little cyclone separator with a 5-gallon bucket vacuum. My own poor man's Freddy. That's how I suck chips out of it half the time. But yeah, so now it's like, well, if I put a bigger machine back there, and then I started talking with people and realized that I really love to put a Speedio with a trunnion, and I don't have Speedio with trunnion kind of money, and that's okay. So Tormach it is, because it continues to make its keep over and over and over and over again. I think I paid for that machine 4 or 5 times with the money that I've made on it because I paid such little money for it, and although it's not powerful, it's connected to the house, and I can go out there and start it and cook and make dinner and hang out, watch TV, and I hear the spindle ramp down, and I go out and change a part. And I don't care if I, have 4-hour cycle times for parts. I'm not making high enough volume of stuff, and my, the machining envelope of the machine is very small, and I end up doing quite a bit of plate work on it, and it just runs away doing its holes, sitting there with a 16th inch, just boring in holes over and over and over and over and over again. And it's absolutely wonderful. I don't have to think about it. So I guess one more update before we start wrapping up here. I know a couple weeks ago, AJ was talking about a ring box, and I don't think I ever updated the show because the show went out before. So officially she said yes. It's a wonderful thing. Woo-hoo! Big celebrations. So now it's the super fun times of planning weddings. Of course, is so much fun.
I think you need to share both boxes real quick while we got you here for those video watchers.
For the video watchers, this is the official box that we ended up using. I would bring it closer, but this is a manual focus camera. So it's stainless steel. It weighs a remarkable amount. Clamshells. The insert is 3D printed TPU with like a 5% infill, and it's wrapped in a microfiber cloth that I cut from a glasses carrying case and super glued to it. So I was able to throw that together fairly quickly as I drop it all over myself here. And it's exactly as crude as it sounds as I pop it out here. So the bottom is literally super glued on and it's squishy TPU. So that is the one that I ended up utilizing because the boxes showed up to me the day before I proposed, because AJ decided to take the boxes on a wonderful East Coast grand tour. And so I think they made it, I'm not sure the exact mileage, but from somewhere in Indiana to somewhere in like Virginia or Pennsylvania before they got shipped.
Mm-hmm.
And so that took a little while, and then of course I think they shipped on the day after Christmas, and so of course it's all the crazy shipping crazies. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
one that AJ had worked on is a kind of a clone of the, I think Titan makes the ring box design, or Kinetic Precision or something like that.
Yeah, so Titan makes them, but he wasn't the one that came up with the original design.
Gotcha.
So
So yeah, that's I played around with that design a little bit, trying to figure out how to get that to work. It kind of works. It's certainly tight and spongy in a couple spots. So once the new spindle goes into the machine, it will get reworked. But it did turn out really cool. And this is stone washed aluminum. We were going to
do
do
you
it
have
in titanium. That didn't end up working out.
do you have magnets that go in it like the original, or is it all just free floating?
No, so that one does not currently have magnets in it. The design did. So I do have magnets in the design for it. But just because so AJ finished machining it and instantly assembled it just to start getting a feeling for fit and all that, and it didn't flow the way that it should. And realistically, it probably needs some shoulder screws, and it probably needs a little bronze bushing. Those two things would make it work very smoothly, and in that case it probably won't hold itself closed very well, so it will definitely need the magnets. So I have the CAD model that I'll be able to put some magnets in it. Luckily, all the parts are very prismatic, and it will not be hard to set them up for kind of a rework op 9 million or whatever they are. I do know that AJ periled over dozens of small drills trying to make this box. I was getting text message after text message. I think it was on Christmas or the day before Christmas of, well, I want my last 3 drills. And 10 minutes later it was, well, there's only one more drill. Uh, and
Oh.
I just, they counted down. And he was texting. I felt so bad. He was texting at, I think it was midnight my time, which just says for 3 o'clock in the morning for him, still working on it. And well, AJ will be the first guest to the wedding, to say the least, and many a thanks for future minis and a million IOUs, needless to say. So here's my official and public very much thank you to AJ for helping with that project.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Titan ring design. He has a lot of cool stuff. We stole one of his designs for some of our students. I was
Interesting.
going to look up what it was called, but it's the one where it's the rings that like are it's the same part. You have 6 of them, and it kind of folds into itself. I don't remember what that thing was called.
This one is that.
But
This is 6 different pieces and they fold into a cube. It's
yeah,
not
but
this
they
though.
were six of the same piece.
Oh, this is 2 different parts made 3 of each.
Yeah, no, these were 6 identical pieces, and I liked it because the design was such that you could just keep adding them, and it would just grow over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thought process was I was going to have all the students make them, and then they could see how tolerant stack up could make it tight or loose, and they could kind of see all that stuff. And then I could also have a chain history of all the students that took the class because they had them engrave their names on them.
Mm.
That was going to be my goal, but I'm not doing that anymore. So
Gotcha. Quick update: that shop that makes the ring boxes is called Degrees of Freedom.
Degrees of Freedom. Okay.
That's their shop name. That I guess I should probably hit this button, huh? Just for Jamie. But yeah, so enjoy
Mobius
DUF.com.
Kaleidoscope.
The Kaleidoscope.
Mobius Kaleidoscope is what he. So, anyways, yeah.
Cool.
If you go to Titan Ring Designs, he's got some videos of it kind of folding in on itself.
Yeah, I'll certainly put a link in the description at a minimum.
So, anything else you got, or?
I don't, but I know you had a little shout out or a little call out you wanted to do.
I did, and I appreciate the reminder. So, I meant to say this when we were talking about the product side on the question. However, one of my customers ended up closing down one of their departments, and so one of their engineers was let go, and he was the one that ended up finding us and got us working for that company. But he's also an extremely talented engineer, And so I just wanted to do a shout out that he's looking for either contract work, case by case, hourly rate, or a full time position. He's kind of in the market, and so I told him that I'd do a shout out on our podcast. But he's a really good guy. He's done a lot of work. He's got a lot of skills, and he's kind of worked in the product development side of his company. And I would honestly, if I had the money, I would probably hire him right away. But unfortunately, I can't afford him at his current rate for a full time hire. Although I am trying to come up with some stuff that I might send him part time work for, because I do want to get back into the product space, but I'm not quite ready for it. But if he gets desperate enough, I'm definitely going to send some work his way just to kind of make sure that he doesn't go hungry. But if anyone else has any interest in having someone who's a very good at what he does, do some design work for them, let me know. Reach out to me, and I will put you in contact. So, without publicly blasting him on the internet, so he doesn't start getting spam calls.
Well, you don't want to put his phone number, his social security number, right here at the bottom of the screen.
No. I told him I wouldn't do that. So,
well, but that is very kind of you.
So, anyways, I've been in, well, I haven't had a whole department close down and get let go like that, but I have had other people that have been in similar situations, and it just sucks. So, and this dude, he's a really good guy. He's actually a country singer as well, which I didn't know. And
does he do weddings?
He might. I could ask.
No, it's okay.
But I feel like he did a tour where he opened for Jason Aldean. He was the drummer on one of the intro bands. I believe that's who it was.
Interesting.
Oh, and so, which is kind of cool. So, very talented individual. Anyways,
awesome.
So if anyone
will be great.
Yeah, if anyone needs design work, let me know, and I'll put you in contact. But yeah, that's about all I got.
Great. And with that wonderful plug.
All right, guys, we've reached the end of the podcast. And because I've been called out by both AJ and Jacob, I will no longer be saying, that, whose companies and who's here on the outro. But I guess in this case I will. Because it is a guess. Well, Jacob, I appreciate you filling in for AJ on this podcast. So thank you for coming in and keeping us alive and filling in AJ's shoes. So
appreciate it.
Next time, bring orange. One of a kind. So anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out. If you like the podcast, like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, and we'll catch you guys next week. Which next week, teaser, I believe we have a guest. So catch you guys next time.
Goodbye. Yes, there will certainly be a guest. Wonderful, wonderful young man who does some wonderful work in the space. I think it'll be really exciting.